Well, hello YouTube, this is RL coming to you again from my channel. This is a special podcast that I'm doing with my friend CK.
How you doing?
We're doing a remote, I guess you could call it a remote podcast. CK is not
That's right.
physically here because of the obvious reasons with what's going on in the world right now. Obviously
That's right.
practicing social distancing, and we've been talking about doing a remote podcast for a while, so this is a perfect opportunity.
It is. And I'm glad we had a chance to finally kind of sit down and bang this one out because we've been talking about it for a while and never really got to working out a solution.
I mean, obviously the circumstances are not ideal, but if it's gonna inspire us to do some podcasts and put some content out there, I mean, you gotta look at the silver lining in life, right?
That's right.
So we're gonna talk about what's going on in the world. Try to keep it light and not too depressing.
Sure. Yeah, I'm good for that.
What are your thoughts going on in the last couple of weeks?
A lot more has happened in the last couple of weeks than the last 2 months. For me, like with regards to just my regular life and I guess what we would call a change in the norm. What they're saying in the media is obviously now the new norm is isolation, self-isolation, and social distancing and such. And it's a cultural change. It totally is a cultural shift, especially coming from maybe 2 decades ago, where the internet and Skype and Facebook, those existed and stuff, but they've always been evolving with internet and with technology and such. And we've never been closer as humans on this planet, yet never been further away because everybody relies on the quick and easy way to get a hold of someone, which is shooting them a text or shooting them a phone call as opposed to actually meeting up. And now we're kind of rolling back into, I don't want to call it a dark age, I'll call it like a dim age.
Yeah.
Where
Let's not use the word dark age, maybe. That would be, let's not set up any panicking. It's the dark age. No,
Yeah.
it's a very depressing age.
It's
and
a
a very
depressing age.
But I mean, look at the positives. I mean, if this happened, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago or before internet, because now we could at least use other means to stay in contact. It would have been a
That's
little
right.
bit maybe more difficult for some people to handle.
Oh, I agree. I agree totally. It would be a lot more psychologically and emotionally stressful for many people. I'm kind of glad in a way that a lot of people now are leveraging the internet and leveraging, alternate ways of communicating with people in this time of need. We need to stay communicated.
Yes.
And we need communicating with others. We need to stay connected with others. And it shows as a society that, when things go bleak, that, we find ways to get through.
Yes.
And one way is, people having to work together by working apart. I mean, it's kind of interesting in a way that we have these technologies and very few businesses and people have used it. Perfect example, my wife just got her dad, my father-in-law, on FaceTime for the first time ever. Like he's 86. He has no business on the internet. He didn't really care. He uses his TV and he knows how to use his flip phone for when he needs to make emergency calls and such. But outside of that, it's his answering machine, his DVD Blu-ray player, and that's basically it. That's like the max of his technology access. So, him seeing himself for the first time and talking to Carla and seeing his grandson for the first time over an iPad is awesome. It's a great feeling. And I'm sure that he felt that, if there wasn't a time to do it, this is probably the time to do it.
Right. Well, I mean, if you could look at a positive, and it's teaching some people who are not usually familiar, I mean, older population. I don't want to generalize, but yeah, it's mostly older generations who didn't grow up with internet and all these technological advancements are more prone to avoid it and not want to learn because it's new and it's scary, Maybe, in a positive, it's teaching some people who are maybe not, have been avoiding using Skype communication, seeing video calls to see a face, not just talking, because, visual is important too.
It's
we can
very
look at the
important,
positive there in terms of, changing our mindset and changing the way we approach things. What do you think of the long term once we get over this? Because it will end eventually. It's not going to last forever. It's going to change the way of thinking and the way we dealing with the public, communication, and how we think.
Definitely. Just like, how war times have changed generations back then and how they worked around things and how they made it work and how they kept society functioning, in cases of pandemics, and not just this one and other ones around the world, or epidemics, in isolated areas, they've had to make do because the world can't stop.
No.
Like it can't. We have to keep going. And more so now in the last 2 decades than ever, we have more or less the technology to really and truly keep the engine running for businesses, for governments, all kinds of things. So it's a bit of a wake-up call. It's good. And, we look at all the silver linings. And I think this has provided more positives than negatives, really.
Well, not the dying part, obviously. But I think in the long run, there's going to be more positives than negatives. I mean, obviously, right now we're dealing with it. It's not even close to being over. I mean, I don't want to freak anybody out, but think it's going to get worse, sadly, before it gets better. The reality, people need to do that social distancing. And this is the closest we ever come to like kind of like a war-torn city in terms of what our grandparents had to deal with in the 1940s, with the World War II and isolating or, worrying about the Nazis, the threat of bombings, so they had to stay in. I don't know. I didn't live through it, but
I know we
we were very, I guess in our generation, we're very spoiled that we never had to deal with anything like this. And you're seeing the good and bad coming out of people, and people who are personalities and their mindsets and how they're dealing with it. It says a lot about people who are not listening to the news or listening to what the government and the medical authorities are saying.
Medical authorities, yeah, exactly.
But it teaches you a lot about people. Like when the chips are down and when the shit hits the fan, it says you see what kind of character the person has, and if they're,
that's right.
Oh, I want to play hockey and I want to, meet my friends and go out to the beach and be around
go
people.
Go to the pub or go to a birthday party or whatever.
I mean, that's selfish thinking. But you know what's sad? That's the new normal right now, is that you can't do those things. And obviously we all want to be social because that's what makes us human. But it's all about the mindset. Some people are like, I want to live. Right. I don't want to be told what to do. And, this is just an overreaction. And that's people justifying their own actions and not realizing the consequences. Because even if you don't get sick, you can still spread it. And then you got to think of other people and not be selfish.
And I think that's the key here. And, any takeaway from what's happening right now in the world, regardless of the pandemic and how it's transmitted or whatever, is you got to think of people.
Yes.
Be considerate.
Right.
It is such a small thing. And only when, true disasters and stuff like that happen in the world do you see, like you said, you'll see people's true colors come out.
Right.
There is a character in all of us, and there is a foundation of morals and values that have been others, set by parents, set by grandparents, society, your community, whatever the case may be, worship, your book.
Yeah.
It truly does say a lot about a person when like you say, the chips are down and their backs to the wall and they got to make a snap decision.
Right.
Those snap decisions may come from bad places if they've had either a history of misinformation or just lack of caring for the information that matters. Because quite frankly, anybody who's smart enough to know what's really happening in the world and seeing it happen in countries like Italy and Iran and just the absolute madness. I mean, it's starting to kind of happen in the United States.
And New York.
Yeah, exactly.
I talked to my father saying like it's really bad there, and there's a lot of people that are still going on the subway for some reason, going to work, and there's like crowds of people, and they're not social distancing as much. There's a lot bigger population there, so it's a very scary situation, and hopefully people are taking it serious. I only know for what's happening in Toronto, pretty serious here, and people are reacting mostly positively in terms of isolating themselves. I don't know what everyone's doing. I mean, you can only control yourself, but hopefully people are listening to the warnings. But this is teaching us valuable lessons. When it's all over, hopefully we can apply it to our life. The me generation, YouTube and with Facebook, Instagram, everyone's, me.
All of it. It is me, and instant gratification.
Self-gratification. I want to do this. I want to have fun. But everyone's got their own mentality, their own mental well-being, right? And I'm, only going out occasionally for a small walk to get some food if I have to at the corner store.
To get air and some sunlight in your skin,
But even that I'm trying to avoid. I don't want to say I'm paranoid, but you have to be a little bit, right? You got to be aware.
Yeah, agreed.
Mostly I'm worried about my parents. They're, in their 70s, and speaking to my dad, speaking to my mom, and obviously I'm concerned with them more than myself because
of course,
wash your hands, don't touch your face, try to keep safe, try to
keep safe, limit your contact.
Yeah. When did you come to realize this is wow, the shit is hitting the fan, and I'm gonna have to take this seriously? Because 2 weeks ago we were still doing the things that we normally would do, right? Go out, socialize, and going to stores. When did it really hit you that you felt like, wow, this is something serious that we haven't experienced ever?
It was right around the time when I think British Columbia had maybe like 3 or 4 cases.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any in Ontario. Maybe there might have been one, and then one maybe in like Saskatchewan or Manitoba or something like that. And Canada was maybe at like 9 or 11. It was a very insignificant number with regards to the size of, obviously our provinces and the density of our cities. Mm-hmm. And then, we hear about the case that happened here up in Muskoka. And it was an elderly person, and the information information was that they tested for COVID after the person had passed, so it was part of a post-mortem.
Right.
And they found that that person was afflicted with the coronavirus. So it then was like, oh, Muskoka region. It's not just city. It's not just deep in Toronto where it's high density. It's not just happening in high density. It's happening anywhere, and it can happen everywhere.
And it's not just happening in this.
Scary.
It's not just happening in China. Sorry to cut you off. It's happening in Europe. It's happening here as well. And
it's actually happening here. And then what really kind of kicked it into full blown, okay, let's take a step back and think positively, but also think cautiously when it was stated state of emergency.
Yeah.
We recognize as a government that there is an issue.
Right.
We're trying to stop or slow down the impact right now. And when you do something like that, like, when you declare a state of emergency or call in the military or anything on that grand scale, most people usually, the ones that are conscious of kind of what's happening in the world will be like, oh, and get educated and stay in the know.
Yeah.
It's tough. I'm not a news guy. I don't say I avoid the news. I watch tickers. I read things that are interesting to me. Mostly it's overseas and it's usually depressing kind of stuff. But as soon as everything started to revolve around this, one, and two, a case so close to home and, for me, a very serious thing that it's elderly people and those with immune system and pre-existing health conditions.
Right.
Now, it's not just a flu. It's not leukemia. It's not, pneumonia. Those are manageable. They're severe illnesses, but they're manageable illnesses. This one there's nothing yet. You know what I mean? It's brand new.
Yeah.
They're figuring it out as we're figuring it out. The last thing you want to do is get yourself infected and ruin it for other people.
No, for sure.
So be courteous, right? Be conscious of those things.
No, I agree 100%. And I think when I started to realize it was called it a pandemic, this was, I think, March 12th when it was officially called a pandemic, and they postponed the basketball season in NHL. I think that's when people started to realize, oh, shit, this is real. But, that's when I realized it. And I went to the store, and everyone was lining up into the aisles, and everyone was hoarding toilet paper. That's when, I said, okay, this is getting serious. Don't know why people went to the toilet paper. I know we talked about that a few days ago.
That's right.
What's the psychological reasoning for toilet paper hoarding when you think that would be later into the pandemic where people have hoarded with the food and you would think they would go towards the non-perishable items like canned foods,
grains,
anything,
and boxes,
rice, anything that could be last long periods, don't go bad. You could ration those out, but why toilet paper? I mean, you're not really, if you don't have enough food, you're not going to need much toilet paper. You got to take some humor in that.
I do. I laugh at it all the time. Man.
It's just like, I'm going to hoard all the toilet paper and no toilet paper. It's like, really? You do realize there are other ways. I think that's the least of our worries to have not enough toilet paper, especially when you have to be rationing food. And, we're not that stage yet. And a lot of people I'm hearing where they have so much food, they're overeating because they have nothing else to do. And that's going to cause issues, down the road.
Issues on itself.
Weight gain and stuff. Why do you feel it went to that extreme? Maybe empowerment and people seeing people hoarding and they're like, oh, I gotta get that toilet paper before other people get it. It's like a competition thing, perhaps,
It is. I believe that certain items, things like essentials, right? Things like water, things like you said, non-perishable goods, canned foods and, grains and wheats and things like that you can have an abundance of and not pay a ton of money. As for like standard household products, I guess people feel as though on top of the, consuming food, obviously for health reasons, cleanliness is the next thing. And sanitizer, I get it, because like with anything that's passed through contact, you got to kill germs. And so things like antibacterials and sprays and stuff like that, wipes and stuff, understandably so. Toilet paper was, yes, a very strange thing. If I were to pick a rationale behind it, I believe a preparer's mindset type of thing. People that stock up on things like toilet paper or paper rolls for wiping, I couldn't tell you, because if it were cloths or microfiber cloths, things like that, again, I get it because of the whole sanitizing of surfaces. But toilet paper, unless this was like a diarrhea-based or, a bowel-based virus that caused that type of issue.
Should have had a spoiler mention. By the way, we're going to be talking about diarrhea, so if you don't like to hear about this topic, you should skip over and tell you the time to continue on. But hey, we already passed it, so what are we going to do?
Yeah, it's definitely a strange one. The crazy thing that's happening now with regards to, like you said, masks and gloves being on shortage, because it has never been at this level. For decades, they've had a manageable amount, and now the demand has shot up like 10 times, right? So all of a sudden, now there's this shortage in it. And I just read an article today, it's on CP24, where this family was selling boxes of masks at like exorbitant prices in a park. They were fine. It's nuts that it's gotten to that level where someone is trying to take advantage. And it's not just businesses, but it's individuals as well. Which saddens me.
I don't doubt it. As I said, it brings best and worst out of people. And sadly, there are people who are always going to take advantage and try to make some money over this situation, right? I mean, some people say, well, it's a free market, we could charge whatever we want. But when you have a situation where people are needing this and it's dire and
That's
you've
right.
left life or death and you're going
That's
to
right.
charge way more than it's worth just because there's a shortage, supply and demand, but it shouldn't apply to this because we should be a caring society where we want to look after people and say, I don't want anyone to die because they can't afford to purchase this, or put people in a situation where they're now having to choose food over safety. That's disgusting. There are going to be people who are going to do that. There are all kinds of people in the world, bad and good people. Nothing's going to change with that. There was a news report today about this charging $30.
Oh, the Lysol. Yeah.
Lysol.
Yeah.
And they said
I
afterwards it
saw
was an
that.
error in our pricing. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
An
right.
error in the
Yeah,
pricing.
right.
Sure, you didn't know that $30 is way too much charge for Lysol, right? You know what? People are not stupid. And these companies
Nope.
and people who are doing this kind of stuff, treating people like they're walking wallets and taking advantage, that people will know, I'm not going to do business with these people, in the future,
That's right. Yep.
And so you might be
Yep.
thinking you're making money right now, but you're not gaining any loyalty. You're not
Exactly.
gaining people. You're going to get people who are saying, you know what? You took advantage of me when the world was in crisis. When the world is back to normal, I'm not going to support your business. They should realize that. It's a terrible thing, but that's part of the world we live in.
Capitalist mindset. You can't get around that. Some people have it more so than others. It's not to say that we don't all want to gain from something. No one person is completely selfless, and no one person is completely selfish. There is this level in between, and it truly does show when push comes to shove. It really comes out.
If I'm charging a crazy amount of money because they know they're going to die if they don't have this and they're taking advantage of that, I think that's disgusting. Knowing that, I'm not selling it to you unless you pay me $1,000 for this. I'm exaggerating to make a point, and then they can't afford it and they're going to die. You should be ashamed of yourself. You just caused someone to die and you're justifying it. How?
I know.
That's my view. This is a very scary time, and you have to think of the ramifications of your actions and say, you know what? I don't want anyone to die because they can't get this product, and I'm not going to take advantage of that. Because it works both ways. One day you're going to be in that situation, and you know what? Maybe you'll get that karma, who knows? I'm not going to say karma, but I said karma, so I can't take it back. I hope there is some karma for people who taking advantage of people who are in need.
Yeah.
I won't deal with those companies. Anyways, this is not the podcast we wanted to do, but it's something that's important to talk about. It's relevant, and I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's just good to be able to share our opinions, because I believe we see the world and we see the situation like a lot of other people do. And, whether or not they're sharing it on Facebook or over the phone with friends and family, or but not really saying anything out loud, it needs to be said and it needs to be heard. It honestly does. And we're not here to try and scare anyone, like you said from the beginning. And I believe it's just, it's an honest situation that we need to take seriously. So, I'll end with wash your hands, and moisturize. It's because I realize that I've got like alligator knuckles right now from washing my hands so many times. And I have a message to give to all you guys, anyone who's listening to this: sanitize, moisturize, stay safe, people.
Everyone has their own issues regarding this. On that note, I'm going to say take care. Everyone stay safe.